All right, we're back. We are live again. So today we're going to be talking about how to improve focus, maintain focus, and I guess some of the little like tricks that we use or maybe don't use so well. Let's hop right in. I have the statistic I want to go over and then get your kind of, gut reaction to this. But so Data Reportal, weird name, but they did a study and they reported that the average American spends 7 hours and 4 minutes looking at a screen every day. When I think about focus, this is kind of the first thing that jumps out to me is not how do I get more focused, but how do I cut out distractions? So, when you hear that right away, like 7 hours and 4 minutes a day looking at screens, I'm assuming that's mostly phones. What's your reaction?
I mean, it makes sense. I for myself, I definitely spend pretty much all day looking at a screen, except for when I'm maybe outside, whether that's the computer, which I do, a lot of graphic design and editing, so I'm always staring at a screen, or I'm looking at my phone when I'm taking a break, or I'm watching TV, or, you know, so that doesn't surprise me at all.
It's interesting. I think look, part of the screens is natural, right? Like if you work like this, we're looking at screens right now. So I like to break down my screen time into like what I'll call productive screen time versus unproductive screen time. Productive screen time. All right, I am using our project management tool. I'm writing little notes for this. I'm scheduling something. Like I would lump maybe email in there, but unproductive screen time is to me like getting caught in a TikTok content hole or be stuck on Instagram forever. One of the interesting things in this episode being about focus, right, is how quickly we can be when we have our phones beside us, like we can quickly be one interrupted, sucked into like some where did 25 minutes go and you're on YouTube or you're watching Instagram. And then also not only like how that happens and you feel poorly after, but then I remember the study came out. I believe it was UC Berkeley, but I could be wrong on that. That said it takes 20 minutes roughly after you've been interrupted to get back into flow. So do you do anything, or one of you like found that to be true, and then two, do you do anything to kind of minimize the chance of interruptions?
Let's see. So first part being how quickly can I rebound essentially after being distracted? I think 20 minutes makes sense. I'm sure some days it's way more than that, which I think is why, and we talked about this on the last podcast, but this is why I try my best to maintain the boundaries around the beginning of my day because after lunch, you can likely get one more sprint, but you really have, or for I have to really zone in and try to focus on what I'm doing. I've found as techniques to help me stay on track. I alternate between different productivity hacks. So whether that's creating a to-do list by hand or using some of our project management tools, so like Notion, or then using the calendar. And I find over time, one may become ineffective. I don't know why, but sometimes my brain has to switch it up. So, whereas a to do list manually by hand worked really well for me for a little while, at certain point, I become maybe my list becomes too long or I become overwhelmed by it. So, I have to switch it into something else, whether that's plugging it into Notion, for example. We use Notion and creating like timeline versions or creating to do list tasks or there's a variety of different things you can do to help make sure that you stay on task. But yeah, sometimes you have to switch it up just to refresh your brain and help, I don't know, maintain that structure.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think when people are talking about or searching more, hey, how to increase focus, or what they're really saying is how do I get the important things done? Right? How do
Hmm.
I get more things done that are important to me? We look at, what's really the underlying want or need there. That's what it is. So one of the things that I do to approach or to account for that and then approach is go, okay, how can I rank order my tasks for the day, for the week, for the month, and rank order them in a way that I go, okay, this is my highest priority task. I need to get this done today. Here are some other tasks that if I get done, that's gravy. And then here are like a bunch of little sprints that I should either be delegating or, push to a later date. When I look at like focus, it's really how am I performing against the high priority task and is that getting done? Because I've been very focused before on the wrong task, right? So that's like something I think we have to look at. It's easy to be like, "Oh, I'm super focused, but I'm noodling something that's really insignificant to my business." Because if we're looking at this from a building a business perspective, building a side hustle perspective, it's not just am I focused, but am I focused and is my energy going in the right direction?
Yeah.
Right? I think that's so important, and I think early on in the business days, we had talk about this all the time, like playing business and doing business, but early on, I remember I was freaking out and I wanted to make all these flyers to hand out to tell people to like go to my website. And I was like promoting it to students who had no money. And it was just like, sure, I was really focused on it. I went to the printer, I was doing all of this stuff in 2011, thinking I was, working and I was actually helping my business. But ultimately, it was energy in the wrong direction. Have you ever, yeah, like how do you I guess disseminate and figure out which tasks are the high value that you should be working on? Do you have a system to be like, this is what I need to work on, this is what I need to delegate, this is maybe a low value task, or I caught myself obsessing over something maybe that isn't quote unquote important at that time?
Mhm. I try to structure my tasks in the day so that things that are a bit more systematic are done earlier in the day, and things that require a bit more free-flowing thought and creativity, I like to do those at the end of the day. Because if I do the opposite, I'll spend all day noodling something, maybe that's moving something a pixel this way or that way, or overthinking the content, the caption. And I find if I can do things at the beginning of the day that are a bit more automatic, that really helps me to be more effective and knock out the most important tasks.
Do you think that, like, I never was in the corporate world. Do you think being in the corporate world and now owning your own business that you've had to change kind of how you approach tasks? Like, because here's my gut feel: is it corporation 1, 2, 3, ABC, whatever corporation I'm at, my manager is going to tell me what to do. I'm going to have kind of a pretty long time to do it, and I'm going to be spoon fed at least the direction that I need to go. So now, once you step in and you own your own business, you are HR, legal, marketing, accounting, sales, everything. So we can default to like spending too much time maybe on facets of the business that we shouldn't, because our time is so precious when we have to be all departments now when we're starting our own business. Did you feel that at all? Was there an adjustment in like, whoa, I'm responsible for all my own time, or was it pretty seamless and did those skills kind of transfer over?
That's interesting. I hadn't really thought about it, but I guess my sense of how that's changed over time can only be, I guess, kind of quantified in how I feel while working or while trying to structure my day or while trying to figure out high priority tasks, low priority tasks. Whereas, like you're saying, while I was working in a corporate company, it was very, it's all laid out for you. The map is there. You know exactly what needs to be done. Granted, working in a creative industry, it was a little bit of, well, this could take us, 2 weeks, or it could take us 3 days, or we need to get this done. It should take us 2 weeks, but we have to condense it into 3 days. So it was just a bit more of managing, you know, people and managing expectations and trying to wrangle the creative person or the person who is doing the design. I think now what I'm finding is certain tasks have more inertia to getting into them and getting them done. So, for example, there's things I like to do and there's things I have to do. And especially when you run your own business, a lot of, I didn't get into this industry to do bookkeeping, like I didn't start my own. I mean, it's part of it, which is the point, but I think it's about kind of being real with yourself. You are the manager and you also are the employee. So you kind of have to switch hats at different times to allow yourself, when I need to be creative, I need to allow myself the freedom to be creative, and I need to block off time so that I can do that effectively and get in the zone. Because, like you said, like we talked about earlier, it takes a while to really settle into a task or settle into a project if you're transitioning from one thing to another. So again, doing more of the automatic things in the beginning, things that require a little less creative juice maybe, and then switching into that later on after lunch allows me to really fully refresh my brain and settle into the next task. It's almost like I like to think of it too as like, not like, obviously it's a habit, but it's almost like a ritual, I
Mm,
think would be a really good way of putting it, where you have to kind of spark or, you know, signal to your brain that, okay, it's time for creativity. Or signal to your brain, hey, it's time for us to write this caption, or it's time for us to switch into, copywriting mode or strategy mode, because they are very different states of mind. And it's like you have to intentionally signal to yourself and settle into the task, um,
totally.
and I think those rituals help.
And sorry to jump in, but I think that's what it comes down to is like this idea of time blocking and blocking away what is going to be set at each time. Okay, Tuesday morning, I am going to handle my accounting. Okay, Wednesday afternoon, I'm going to be sales. And just kind of putting on those different hats at different times instead of I'm going to do sales for 10 minutes and then I'm going to do my numbers for another 30 and what have you. Now, for those listening who are starting a side hustle, thinking of starting a side hustle, you're like, hey, that's all gravy, buddy, but I got kids and I got a full-time job, and how do I just find a minute to focus, right? How do I find a minute to just like knock out some things as I start to build this business on the side? My advice to anybody, there's a couple things I would do. Well, one, screen time, like we said at the start. So I would cut back. I would probably put the phone on airplane, delete social media apps, whatever you need to do, especially when you are going to be working on that side hustle of business. Two, if you're finding yourself, and this is going to be up to you, if you're finding yourself like you're dead tired after a full day's work, coming home and you try to settle into work on your business at 8 p.m. or whatever it may be, passion can only take you so far. But if you have to do this all the time, I'd actually recommend, and it might not work for you, but how I would do it would be I would probably try to go to bed earlier and I would try to wake up 2 to 3 hours before my job and try to work then when maybe there's not as much going on. There's not email, there's not kids, there's not your partner, there's not things going on that you can actually close the door, go to your office, etc., and put some time away or put some time, into your business. I say this because it's interesting. I'm looking at Google Trends right now, and I'm looking at, how to improve focus and how the searches for that haven't gone up, and they've gone up pretty dramatically since 2010, right? And it's interesting to me because as we get to more and more remote work and more jobs that include technology, my hypothesis would be there's more distractions. And then I think COVID was gas on that fire because now you're at home and a lot of us are working from home, and okay, what's around me at home? Well, I got my PlayStation in the other room. There's a TV now that I can watch. I can have TV shows going on. I can have the dog needs to go out. Oh, I'm just going to make a quick, snack where I feel as things before were a little more regimented. Okay, at a corporate job, you're not going to I don't have a PlayStation. There's no TV shows. You have to work, right? So those are those things that it's interesting to see at a at scale that more and more people are like, how do I improve my focus? How do I get more done? Essentially, is what they're asking. And I think the work from home and more technology into the equation probably isn't helping. So it's I think acknowledging that problem and then being like, okay, how do I set aside time for myself? Two, am I working in the right environment? And what I mean by that, are you working in your kitchen? Oh, you're in a small apartment? Okay. Is there a place you can go? Is there a co working space that you can rent a desk at to go 3 times a month? Like, looking for alternative solutions to make sure that you are in a distraction-free environment, you know?
Mhm.
Um, I think that is so important. I mean, is there anything that jumps out to you when you look at, or for an advice standpoint to give to people on, okay, you know, this is something that I battle with, or here's how I try to, improve focus or get things done. Or if you catch yourself, like I catch myself on Instagram or something, I like throw the phone. I'm like, okay, it's time to like get it out
Not
of
that you
arm's
throw
reach.
it on, yeah,
Yeah.
not
I have a
throwing it
little
on
bed over
concrete, just
here
throwing it on a bed.
beside me. So for those who are watching on YouTube, yeah, I'm in a little room, but there's a little office setup, but then there's the guest bed here. So I'll chuck the phone and you can get on with it.
Yeah, I it's hard for me to maintain focus, and be completely 100, especially as someone who works in social. So I go ahead and especially nowadays, you have to post so much manually, otherwise you don't get reached, but that's beside the point. I will post something for a client, and the next thing you know, I'm mindlessly scrolling through that client's Instagram, and it's like I'll catch myself, sometimes quicker than other times, but it's like, oh shoot, I have to like kind of click myself back into it. So things that are helpful for me are, because I've taken off pretty much every app from my phone except for Instagram because you have to do that manually anyway. So what I do is because I have to do some things on the computer while I'm doing that, I have the computer screen in front of me. I make sure that the windows I have open, the tabs that are open on my screen are the task that needs to be accomplished. And that way, by the time I do snap back, I look up and I realize, okay, that's the thing I'm supposed to be working on. That's the thing. Once that's done, there's another tab, or, it's, you got to do yourself some favors and really help keep yourself on track, because if I look up and there's a million tabs open and none of them are quite exactly what I need to do, then I'll, 20 minutes later, after trying to sort myself out and get back in the groove, then I'm coming back. But yeah, that really helps. Deleting the apps from the phone really helps.
You
I've
said
also
something there.
found,
I want to
oh,
just
go ahead.
pause on for a sec. Do yourself, when you say like do yourself a favor with the tabs. Right now, if you're at a computer watching this, like look at your tabs. How many tabs do you have open? If your computer is running slow, it's probably because you have too many tabs open. Here's a golden rule: 5 tabs max. If you can't, and if someone's like, "No, I need more," no, you don't. You don't need more than 5 tabs. I will call bullshit on anybody. You can get down to 5 tabs. I also think like you don't need 3 monitors. That's just inviting another distraction, right? Inviting another distraction. So I believe the key to focus and the key to getting more done is through eliminating distraction. And to me, like
Mhm.
some people, we get on client calls sometimes, and these clients will remain nameless, but we get on and they'll share their screen and they got like 75 tabs. That gives me so much anxiety. I'm like, how this just seems like chaos everywhere.
Oh yeah, definitely. But yeah, I found those to be super helpful. Just try to do the best you can. Try to focus. Try to keep important things up on your screen at any given time so that you can switch back into it when you realize you've lost it.
And what about this? Like for people who maybe are coming to you and saying, well, I can't focus, this, that, like, and this might be something that we end up clipping for social, but like, are there lifestyle changes you think people could make, like eating lighter lunch or getting the sleep? Like, the certain
Oh
like
yeah.
biological favors maybe that people can do?
Oh yeah, definitely. The eating lighter lunches is, you know, pro tip, I would say, because how many times have you gone for tacos, or have we gone for tacos? A nice, delicious Pepe's tacos run, and we come back and we're, sluggish for the next 3 hours. I kind of going back to what you said too about waking up earlier, I found that I'm the most clear headed in the morning. So, whatever needs full thought and distraction free environment, if you wake up before everyone else in your house, you're going to get things accomplished. That's probably the best way to do it. Aside from that, fitness is really helpful. Working out helps to kind of refocus your mind. If you're if you find that it almost feels like you have a million tabs open in your brain, meditation can be helpful. Yoga can be really helpful. Even just sitting outside, or closing your eyes next to a window and just kind of listen and just be present for another moment. And again, kind of going back to like setting up little rituals for yourself, kind of in line with the habit formation, going back to Atomic Habits again, but, cue yourself. Okay, if I need to settle in, maybe I pour myself a cup of coffee and then I go sit at the desk, or, coffee, tea, whatever that is for you. Um, Maybe it's lighting a candle, maybe it's putting on some white noise, but there are certain hacks that you can really do to help do yourself a favor, let your brain switch over into that state it needs to for you to really get things done.
And if you're looking for, if y'all are here and you're like, I want the science stuff on this, I highly recommend checking out the Huberman Lab podcast. He will give you all of the breakdowns on, like, the protocols on how to, kind of neurohack or biohack yourself into productivity. Ultimately, for the course of this, and if you're listening and you've just started a business, you're trying to grow your business, I would say cutting distraction, setting the rituals, as Lauren said, making sure, like, sounds, I know you've heard it a million times, but just like get some sleep, take care of your body. I would also say, this podcast excluded, but watch your consumption of content, just how much you're consuming. I always find the more I'm consuming, the less I'm creating and the less I'm actually getting done on the business front. So I really want to make sure that, I spend equal times maybe consuming and creating. The same thing with, like, if I have something in the business, I believe in spending equal times planning and executing. It's easy to get caught up in one or the other and forget. So just having those little kind of rules for yourself are really good. Is there anything else you want to talk through before we wrap this one up?
I guess just another be real with yourself moment when it comes to consumption of content. I think especially being in the industry I'm in, you can you can use the excuse that, oh, well, I'm looking for inspiration. I'm looking for content inspiration, or I'm looking for, you know, other people so I could see what they're doing so I can, but I need to see X amount of websites before I can design my own, or whatever that looks like. Be real with yourself, be thoughtful and intentional with that sort of planning phase. And, you really don't need much to get started. So just be mindful of it.
And if you
Yeah, go ahead.
and if you're gonna actually, like, say you're in the creative space, you're social media marketing, doing that, and you're like, oh, I want inspiration. Start a folder on your desktop called Swipe File, and literally say, okay, I'm gonna spend the next 30 minutes, and I'm gonna go and Google, ads throughout time for inspiration. I'm gonna go look at reels or content maybe from, like, a HubSpot or what have you, and I'm gonna screenshot and I'll throw it in the folder. Then I would look at what newsletters maybe circulate the best ads or circulate the best social posts. There are people out there doing that research for you. So you don't have to put up this guise of, like, oh, I'm doing research. Well, no, you're watching TikToks. Like, I could tell you I'm doing research, but it's going to become me watching, like, steak videos very quickly. So, like you said, keeping it real with yourself, I think, is pretty big. Awesome. I think this has been a good one. Y'all, if you like this, do us a please do us a massive favor. This is a free podcast, but we would love it if you shared this with somebody who maybe has a business, is thinking about starting a business, and make sure to subscribe and leave us a review. This does us a huge favor. We're a new podcast trying to grow. This is, I mean, that's pretty much the way that podcasts grow and get recognition. So we would appreciate if you do that. This has been the Think Forward podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Jordan Shelton, and I'm sitting here with
Lauren Wesley.
And we will catch you next time.